All right, we are back. Hope everyone had a great Labor Day weekend and holiday. And apparently, since we last spoke, the world has completely turned upside down. Hell has froze over because Instagram grew by one account over the last
Oh, yeah,
24 hours or so.
I just
And
saw this.
and it's a big one. It's a big
That's
one.
funny.
Yeah, Bill Belichick has joined social media. The one phrase I never thought I would utter. Bill Belichick is on Instagram for the first time, obviously, and a lot of people are really excited about it. I'm giving him a follow for sure, and curious to see what he has to say. But this is all in conjunction with him joining Pat McAfee every Monday throughout the season to give their thoughts. Was it they're doing like a Monday night preview, right? Something like that.
I think he's joining Monday, and then Rogers is still like Wednesdays or Tuesdays whenever he does his hit. McAfee's
Yeah,
building his lineup. I gotta say, this is what you get when you date someone 40 years younger than you.
true,
You
true.
eventually get pushed onto social media. I'm gonna follow in hopes that I get girlfriend content. That's really all I don't need the football content from Bill. I'm looking for the
There you go.
girlfriend content. I will say, I think this is all a part of his kind of rebranding in the sense that I think Bill wants to get back into coaching. I think Bill sees
Yeah,
himself having his own version of what Tom Brady had in Tampa, where it's like, hey, I can go for a couple years, help take a program that is just on the cusp to over the cusp, you know what I mean, over the hill, and then maybe if he can do like what a Brett Favre did, what a Tom Brady did, not necessarily has to win a championship, but if he can take a team and have a couple good years, maybe a struggling franchise, it adds to his resume and his greatness. Not that he needs it, but if you look at it, Andy Reid is catching him. If Andy has a chance for a three-peat this year, I think it'd motivate Bill to do it even more. And I think one of the things that we struggled with Bill in the coaching cycle was the dude is rigid. The dude is old. He's old fashioned. And so I think he's trying to show, no, I'm going to go on McAfee. I'm going to have fun. I'm going to do social media. I'm going to relate to younger players. And I actually think even if it is all a stunt, in the end, that slight cracking in his tough facade, I think if he gets back into coaching, will actually help him be a
yeah.
better coach when he returns to coaching. So it's an exciting and yet very odd foray for Bill Belichick this year. It's going to be fun. Him and Nick Saban both all over the ESPN properties and getting their voices out there. It's going to be different, that's for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. And yeah, we've got Tom Brady calling his first ever NFL game coming up here this week, Cleveland and Dallas. So that alone will be interesting to see.
America's
But
game of the
yeah,
week.
we've seen a lot of players in the past talk about this side of Bill that we never get to see. But of course, only the players in the building know that. So yeah, maybe some other players throughout the league we'll get a little bit of insight here from watching Bill and just seeing how he's responded to this. So that part could obviously be a beneficial aspect to Bill's future job searches
Yeah.
here coming up next year and beyond. All right. Well, I'm excited for this episode. We've obviously gone through our AFC and NFC previews, which we will, be posting those graphics sometime tomorrow for all of you to see. But of course, those episodes are out there right now to check out those predictions. A lot of similarities between both of us, but we have some differences and different seedings there as well. But overall, a lot of agreement between the two of us. But now we get to finally talk because Hard Knocks has completed. We get to talk about the full season of your Chicago Bears in the limelight on the national stage every Tuesday for the last 5 weeks. We get to talk some new contracts that have popped up since then, including the ever-evolving Brandon Ayuk saga, as well as a couple other notes and some tidbits from Mark Hespin as well. We'll dive into a Thursday night football preview too. So a comprehensive episode here coming your way right now, but we're going to kick it off with some talk about the beautiful, beautiful bright lights in the Windy City. Excited to talk Hard Knocks. Very much looking forward to this, and but it's been 5 weeks of watching aspects of the Bears that we've never gotten to see. It was a little nostalgic for me, I will say, because I got to walk those halls for about a season and a half. And I was like, oh, I think I know where that room might be in that room, uh, and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
yeah, Hallis Hall is really cool. But we obviously only got to explore a little bit of it, so it was a lot of imagination on my part for most of it. But really cool show. I really liked how they wrapped it up too. So I'm curious your thoughts on episode 5. But really quickly before we dive into that, Brandon Ayuk, that whole situation's done. He signed himself a 30-year average contract with the 49ers, staying put. This was the right decision for Brandon Ayuk and for the 49ers. It did drag on for quite a while, but I don't think either of us are surprised at how this thing ended up when it was all said and done.
Yeah, the only person who should be the main person who should be excited, Brock Purdy. His agent's the main person who's now frustrated and angry because I don't know what kind of money's left around them for them to do a Brock Purdy deal here in the next year or two
Oh,
if
that's
Brock
true.
Purdy earns that deal. I will say this: I would have loved to have seen Ayuk somewhere else. In just for the entertainment value of it. But
Yeah,
I
to
think
see
in
like,
the end,
can we actually see him,
yeah,
have
and
his
to
full
see
talents on
for
display?
Brock Purdy and that Shanahan offense, like they lose a major piece, and how do they respond? How does Brock respond? But I think if you're a Niners fan, you are through the moon, and this is what you do when your window is now, right? Like the end of this contract for Brandon Ayuk, what are the Niners going to look like? I don't know. I don't think even John Lynch knows. I think he has an idea of what he wants them to look like. But between now and the end of that contract, if a Super Bowl ring is on all their fingers, then the money is the money, and who cares, right? Like they just are desperately trying to get that one. I still think for me, the noisy offseason is going to lead to a tumultuous start for the Niners. They're lucky they have the Jets on Monday night at home. I think they could very well come out and blow out the Jets, but I think there's going to be a stretch weeks 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 where you see a Niners offense that's not humming on all cylinders. That once that adrenaline of the start of the season wears off, is a little rusty or a little out of whack because of all of the turmoil. I mean, Christian McCaffrey was a very low contact, low intensity player throughout the offseason. No Trent Williams, no Brandon Ayuk. Debo nursing himself back to health after some injuries at the end of last year as well. It'll be interesting to see for the Niners, but it was the right move for him. Absolutely, career-wise, stay with that stable organization. He got the bag, so you can't complain about that. And for the Niners, I don't think John Lynch really wanted to do this. I think if you would have true serum him, he'd say not ideal to spend this money on Brandon Ayuk. But again, it's an all-in move for this year and maybe next year, while this window is with the current roster constructed still the way it is.
Yeah. No, I do think that they were strong armed at the end of the day, but from what we understand, no, they ended up paying what the highest bidder was willing to pay. I believe New England was offering 30 million a year,
Yeah.
and it was just turned down. So they did end up capitulating in the end. Brandon Ayuk wins out, and so
Dan,
he's going to be a 49er. And gosh, I mean, oh yeah, you can finish that thought actually.
I just really wanted to say, like, do you think the reason the Niners didn't trade him is because they weren't getting a win now player in return? Because I think to me that's really what it was. I think that they
I
were
think it was
waiting
that
for.
or they weren't getting a first. Like if if they could have gotten a depth piece and a first,
Then
I
they
think
would have
maybe
done
they
it.
would have done it.
But I
But
think they really wanted in return a star who can help them
yeah,
win now.
yeah,
And I don't
I
think they
think
were
they
getting
ideally
that.
would have wanted to do the Browns deal, but
Yeah.
because Ayuk reportedly nixed the deal, that was a non-starter. But I do think that the Brown, getting Amari Cooper back a little bit older,
Yeah.
quality receiver. I think
That
that would
fits
have
with
been
your timeline. Yeah.
their perfect situation. Gosh, we'd be talking about the Browns
How,
spending more guaranteed money.
how are we not talking about your Steelers, Cam Hayward? I thought it was going to lead the show.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, hey, I would have loved to lead the show off with that, but I respect the viewers too much than to indulge in my fun enjoyment. But I mean, that is still really cool that he gets to very likely retire a Pittsburgh Steelers, who I was hopeful for, and hopefully this team can get him some playoff wins. I think he's experienced in his whole career 3 playoff wins or 2 playoff wins. I mean, it's
He's a
he's
great
drafted
player.
in 2011. I mean, he's been in the league for a long time. So,
the Trent Williams deal, let's just not undersell too. I think that for the impact on the field is probably the most important thing the Niners did. And again, I don't love it. And I'm sure John Lynch didn't love the money they're spending to a 37-year-old Trent Williams. I think he'll be 38 by the end of the season. But again, if it means by the end of the contract, there's a ring on everyone's finger, that's important. And if there's not a ring on the finger, at least you can go to your fan base and says,
you went all in.
We went all in. We did everything we could, and it didn't work out. And maybe they look back on it for whatever reason it doesn't work out. They'll probably have some valid excuse for it. But credit to the Niners for committing and going all in and not retooling. They have just run it back, and they're going for it.
And they kept the foot on the gas pedal in the draft too, drafting more offensive weapons. And unfortunately for their first round pick, Ricky Pearsall got shot in the chest. What is it? A week ago at this point. Somehow, left the hospital 24 hours later and was in stable condition. And now he's, back with the team and stuff. It's pretty crazy.
Tank Dell was shot this offseason, but I think it was in the leg. He got shot in the chest, took the gun away from the robber, and then shot the robber. It's an insane story, and I don't know if a rookie can win comeback player of the year.
Yeah, right.
But
that'd be wow.
He certainly has a chance if he performs well enough to win rookie of the year based on the story.
It's incredible.
It's a disgusting story because of what we've come to this point in America, where in some of our best and most beautiful, incredible cities. And I've been to San Francisco, a little over, it's been 15 years now. It's 12, 13. And it was an incredible experience, beautiful city, the wharf, going up and down. I can't think of the twisty road and all that stuff, the bridge. But like many of America's best and brightest big cities, there are parts of it now that are just sketchy, even in the heart of downtown where he was shopping, and you're running into crime like that. It's American tragedy in its own right in the story. But man, everyone should be thanking their lucky stars that he's okay. He's going to recover. And because if he was shot and killed, I mean, the tenor of all of this would just be so vastly different. And the conversation, and that sucks too, because we just had a school shooting in America today in Georgia. And again, it seems like the tenor around those conversations only happen when the real tragedy happens, right? If President Trump would have been actually killed in that assassination attempt, the tenor would be changed. Very different, right? So for Ricky, I don't want to compare Ricky Pearsall to Trump, but I do. I mean, gun violence is gun violence, and thankful that Ricky Pearsall is going to be able to play football this year. And the 49ers, I guess they just got to tell their players, we got to go shopping in a different part, stick into the suburbs or the Silicon Valley areas of San Francisco as opposed to downtown.
Yeah, it's a crazy story, but glad that he's going to be able to make a full recovery and be all right. And I believe
wild offseason for the Niners.
Sometime this season, sometime early on this season too, from what I understand. So pretty impressive stuff. Finally, before we get to the Hard Knocks here, the Denver Broncos made Patrick Surtain the highest paid defensive back in NFL history, $96 million contract, 77 guaranteed. Kind of a no-brainer for a Denver team that, yes, they're spending a lot of money, but if there's a cornerstone, a star of this team, it's Patrick Surtain, and he's young enough as well to be able to be there for a very long time. So big win for him, and big win for defensive backs. Now we'll see who's next in line.
Yeah, I'm glad Jalen got his money before Surtain. So Surtain's money is more than Jalen Johnson's of the Bears. I will say, I think this is one of those contracts where the timeline actually is pretty unique and good, right? You're paying him a lot up front when your team is not expected to win, but then you're getting a kind of a good deal in the back end of the deal in years 4 and 5, when you hope, if you're the Broncos, that, hey, there's a rebuild has gone the way it is, and now you're ready to compete. You might have to pay Bo Nix or whatever it might be. Exactly. That, hey, we have a guy who's already got his money. Maybe he'll still be a really great player, and the money won't be as impactful in that regard. So when you have a rookie quarterback, we always say it's the rule of the law. It's the law of the land in the NFL. You pay the other players around him.
All right, let's get to it. The soothing sounds of Liev Schreiber have been narrating your Chicago Bears on Hard Knocks for the past 5 weeks. I will admit I was a little disappointed early on. I thought it was really slow. And that's kind of what we've come to expect from Hard Knocks, unfortunately, over the
Yeah.
past few years. They've had to fill a lot of time with non-football stuff because the teams are kind of, trying to play things close to the vest and whatnot. But I was still enthralled with watching Caleb Williams develop and
Yep.
all of that. And then we get through it and see the preseason games and a couple different storylines develop here and there, and then it all culminates with the final episode this past week of the final cut down days, and all of those discussions that go on when building your roster from 90 down to 53. Your overall thoughts on this show, and then we can kind of talk about some different aspects of it.
I think you were right. I agree with you. It started slow. I mean, I was still really excited and amped to be watching it. But if I step back and I say in general, removing myself, I think one of the reasons it started slow is because the Bears were firm and the McCaskies were firm. There's no swearing in all of Hard Knocks. It's the first Hard Knocks to be completely family friendly. And that was one of their stipulations when agreeing to do it. And so you would imagine, and if you're thinking, why are we spending so much time with this person in this interview, in this room, or just watching these unique highlights? It's because think about how much swearing is actually happening in that building.
They had to cut out, yeah.
And so in order to work around that, you have to film and present stuff in a different way. Longer form interviews, one-on-one, which you get a lot of. Just the highlights and the reels edited in unique ways. I think the other thing for me, the overall view of it, it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be as far as like the media reaction to it, because we remember the famous moments of Hard Knocks, right? Jared Goff going, wait, the sun rises in the east, it sets to the west, which way is east? You know what I mean? Like there was none of those moments, and I had to like clutch my pearls and go on Twitter and instantly try to defend, right? I was really, really nervous about that, about having like, no, I'm going to have to go and get on my high horse and defend it. Overall, it just was able to enjoy it. And I thought, like anything overall, even though it was my team and I was pumped, if I was just a normal football fan, like a lot of these things, I haven't watched the in-season Hard Knocks. I didn't watch the preseason one with the Giants, the off-season one. In the end, we're getting so much from social media anyways, from access. The shine of Hard Knocks is just gone. So I would agree with people being like, this one was a boring season. Fine. Yeah, I think in overall, these shows are now just a more concentrated, pure version of what we get a ton of from our favorite reporters and the team social media on their social media accounts anyway. So
yeah, that's good.
Anyone who's still looking to claim that like glory days of Hard Knocks with, a Rex Ryan or whatever, it's just not happening. It's never going to happen again, because everything now is way more controlled and you're already getting a ton of that unfiltered access.
Did your opinion of any player, coach, front office executive, did any preconceived opinions that you had? Were you surprised by anybody in this one?
I wouldn't say surprised. I think the biggest thing for me, like if I just want to narrow it down, like Ryan Poles, I really felt was the star, and not just episode 5 here at the end, but overall throughout it. I really love the way Poles conducts himself. I really love the way that Poles, as a former player, fits in with the roster, right? You see him on the sidelines. You see him then wearing the suit. He lives in both worlds really comfortably. And that's one of those things I think you really can sense when a team like gels well and a team like, oh, they care about us in that relationship. Flus is also a former player, played at a high level. And so you get this mix with this Bears front office of this like gelling, and they're comfortable when they got to be the suit, but they're also really comfortable when they're just in shorts with the guys evaluating. So I think to me, that was something I knew, but was surprised by, of just like seeing it firsthand, of how just absolutely fluid the transition for Ryan Poles was. And I would argue Flus at times. The Flus family stuff was really fun. You love to see that, because I listen, you go back to my tweets. I tweeted many times, fire Flus. You know what I mean? Like Matt Eberflus hot seat. And so humanizing him in that way is always something that it's nice to get a break from, especially on a non-football Sunday where your emotions are running high. But I was surprised, I think, just how fluid Ryan Poles appeared to be in the transition between GM and player GM, and that on the field, off the field relationship he had with his players, but also with just the team in general.
Yeah. No, I thought that was it. Eberflus was the one I would say that I was most surprised by, just his how calm of an individual he comes across as, and patient, which I think is something that this team would need at this point, and with a young quarterback especially. I don't know. I guess I pictured him as more of like a harsh, a harsher individual,
or a little more Dan Campbell-y, because he's a former linebacker who played at the highest level of. I don't think he ended up playing in the NFL, but he played in college and then went straight into linebacking coach. Like, you think of him as a, he's kind of got the MO of just like the dumb
intense
defensive coordinator, intense. But yeah, no, I agree with you. He's more analytical. He's more reserved than your maybe the initial picture you'd paint. I'd agree.
Yeah, and he and Poles seem to work well together. It seems like they both have a mutual respect. And yeah, I think the way that they conducted business, at least from what we saw on Hard Knocks, was pretty cool to see. And I would say it's uplifting for Bears Nation to at least feel like there's some sense of like stability. It just felt like a professional football team, which
it's weird for the Bears.
Isn't everything that you can't have said that for many regimes in the past. And so to feel like, oh, they conduct business in the normal, typical way, or even just in a positive way, definitely step in the right direction for them. That final episode was the coolest, I thought, mainly because they've gotten a lot better at how they tell the stories of cut days. I remember the initial ones was really hard, like, and just kind of brutal, like how and that is the reality of the NFL life. Is it is harsh, and it is cutthroat, but the way that the teams like approach it, and the way that Hard Knocks tells the stories, at least shows that for a lot of players, like, there is opportunity still. There is the practice squad, potential there. It's not the end of the line for a lot of these players. For a lot, it is too, but it's just about showing the human element to it, and we saw Ryan Poles obviously have a very emotional moment when trying to tell Colbert the bad news, that he was going to be let go. And that that probably had to feel good as a Bears fan, even though I know people are going to say it was for the cameras, or people are going to say he's too soft.
Never know.
Why does this player have to do? You never know. But
you never know. It's all, and that's one of the things that's annoying about Hard Knocks, right? Is we want it to be this peel back the curtain. We're looking at something that they don't know we're looking, but we also then know that they know that we know that they know that we know that we know that they know that there's a camera. You know what I mean? So I'm with you, Dan. I thought I don't think there was a moment that I can remember off the top of my head that felt ungenuine.
It seemed authentic.
If people want to claim that interaction being disingenuous or for the cameras, I wouldn't have taken it that way at all. I thought it was pretty genuine. And again, he is a man who has been cut. He has tried to make rosters. The roster in that building, he's probably been cut in that room. And so I think it is very full circle moment for a guy like Pace, Poles, excuse me. Don't bring up Pace.
No.
He's doing Pace things. Who did they just sign the other day too? And I was like, oh, that's such a Ryan Pace. Oh, Nathan Peterman. The Falcons just signed Nathan Peterman. It's such a Ryan Pace move. I will say, Dan, was there a player? We talked a lot about Poles and Flus. Thoughts on if there was a player that you really stood out to you, or you wanted more of that you maybe didn't get enough of?
I wanted to see more of the Velus Jones transition to running back.
Yes, because we saw it on the field.
Yeah. And I mean, they had, obviously, it was a key chunk of maybe episode 4 or 3. Episode 4, I think there was like a chunk of it where they talked about him, with the running backs coach, and then they showed the game where he had that, sideline to sideline touchdown run. That's a fascinating thing to me, switching positions in the NFL. It's way harder than I think a lot of people give credit for, especially even at, like, people think, with skill positions, like you can do that because it's running an open space at the end of the day. But seeing a lane at the line of scrimmage versus
hitting
running
holes,
a route couldn't be more different. And to do
taking
it at the NFL
handoffs.
level.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
just
I agree
simple
with you.
stuff. Absolutely.
I agree. I think
that was the one thing where I'm like, man, I really want to see more of that. And I wanted to see more Jack Sanborn, to be honest with you.
Yeah, he's a great character. He's a good player.
Yeah. I don't think we saw any of him, to be
honest. My hope is that the Velus Jones stuff is like this. The Bears were like,
they're trying to. Yeah,
we got a little bit of a weapon here. We think we have something special. We might have found something here. And listen, I'll be honest. Just talking strategically, Bears. Roschon Johnson last year was very underwhelming. I had really high hopes for him, and it was very like, this guy feels like just an average NFL running back, like not as explosive.
Do you think he just didn't get the opportunity, perhaps? Or
yes and no, but there was never like, I agree, didn't get enough, especially when things were going bad, but they never seemed to be just the pop, like, right? Just like, ooh, look at that. It's in him.
Herbert,
look, it's in him.
Saw it.
And but Herbert, since the injury, the last the preseason, I was very underwhelmed with Herbert. So I was blown away by the little bit of DeAndre Swift we've seen. And that got me extremely excited. So excited that I drafted him in both of my fantasy leagues that I'm in. And it's also first time ever I'm in 2 fantasy leagues. The new TV station, they have a station league, so I could not do that. So I'm in that one.
You got to set the tone, dude.
I tried to pick almost the exact same players because I know that's maybe strategically dumb, but I'm like, I'm not used to having to manage more than one. Like I have my one.
You end up rooting against yourself half the time.
Yeah, so I didn't want to do that. So I'm like an idiot, and that's just me as a fantasy player. Fantasy's become a distant second to putting money on games and gambling on games over the last couple of years. But I digress. I'm excited as a fan to see possibly what you can do with a Velus Jones. If he can be a poor man's Deebo Samuel, then sign me the fuck up. You know what I mean? Like if he's even 60% of Deebo Samuel, where it's just once or twice a game, and he pops off a 10-yard run because they think he's going to catch a pass, or if he catches a pass, a 12-yard, he catches up. If he's good for 1 or 2 first downs a game, then it's worth the 3rd-round pick that we've been waiting for him to turn into over the last 3 years. Because on this team, with this skill position group, him picking up a first down or 2 a game is like all you need from him. You don't need him to be a star like you needed him to be a star when you drafted him with a 3rd-round pick, because this team got special weapons.
Would you be happy if he just turned out to be Tariq Cohen 2.0? I mean,
at this point, yeah. I mean, because it justifies the pick. You don't have to re-sign him, right? Like at this point, I know it kind of sucks for the player, right? But he's not earned the right. And I know a lot of people were saying there was apparently a 4th-round pick offered for Velus Jones around like a week or 2 ago.
That's what. Yeah.
If I'm the Bears, I'm glad. I'm actually pro not taking that, because again, you're in a. I know it's weird to say, but you're in a win now mode. Not saying the Bears need to win a Super Bowl. Like they're not in a win now mode like we talked about the Niners, but they're in a win now mode of like, you've got to change momentum, right? And I know that it's Flus that's on the hot seat and not Poles. Like Poles that don't believe is on the hot seat at all. It's all on Eberflus. But he still doesn't want these moves to become a failure, right? Like he still has the pride in that. That's really important. And so maybe if you end up letting him walk at the end of the season or whatever, you look back and say, well, we could have an extra 4th-round pick. But if Velus Jones helps you make a wild card berth, and he's and he would if he's a first down or 2 a game guy, then worth every penny, and then you let him walk, or you try to re-sign him to a really team-friendly deal and say, hey, stay here and let's grow your role in the offense, right? So yeah, I would agree with you. That's a storyline. I would have selfishly, I think there's a lot of great personalities on the Bears team because, again, I know the team differently. So there's a lot. I can name 5 or 6 guys I'm like, I wanted to see more of. But overall, I think I got what I wanted, right? DJ Moore had his moments. Roman Caleb had their moments. Keenan Allen had his moments. Like the stars, the guys who that if you are an average NFL fan who's turning into Hard Knocks, you got what you wanted, and you got the names to have their moments. And so I'm not going to be critical on any of that for sure.
Yeah, no, all around still a solid show, and happy that the Bears were finally featured on it. It was
I am
really
too
cool
now because now we can put it behind us, and now we don't have to do it again for
right. That's very true too. Yeah, might as well do it during Caleb's rookie year. Just real quick, like why do you think they kept Velus Jones as a receiver? Because I don't see why it matters if you designate him a running back or receiver.
Oh, see now again, I think that's
who you're keeping.
Debo Samuel is designated as a receiver. I think again in their mind they're just trying to play those mind games.
But Debo didn't. I mean, it seems like they're saying Velus like basically made the full transition back to running back, whereas Debo never like transitioned to a running back. They just used him like one.
No, but I would agree. I think the point is that they don't want the look of 4 running backs on the roster. That looks odd, right? On a 53, you don't carry 4. And so you carry him as a wide receiver and you keep him that designation. So again, you line him up week 1 in the slot and and no one's thinking anything of it. It's not like we're lining up DeAndre Swift in the slot and then you're thinking, what is this? And so the hope being is that he actually runs routes and he is a running back, but the league thinks of him as Fair. It's like a Taysom Hill, right? He's listed still as a tight end on the roster. So it's, I think I may be wrong in that now, but in like fantasy, he's a tight end, right? So it's like this whole weird mind game stuff that teams like to do. And if it can bring some sort of edge for Shane Waldron,
they'll take it.
Yeah. Also, can we just, as we're wrapping up this discussion on it, I just want to say, right now, I have a very positive vibe on Shane Waldron. I'm pro Shane Waldron. He will be the first one thrown under the bus if things go poorly. Just he needs to know.
Yeah.
Him and Flus. But I know now Flus is so hands-off in that offense that
that does
Flus
seem like
is going to catch more heat when it's like a bad, why did you go for it there? Or a bad, don't kick the field goal, go for it. Or a bad defense breakdown because he's really in control of the defense. If the offense sucks, I will fire Waldron. I'm going to be the leading hashtag account for fire Waldron.
You'll be the phone call that he has to answer to. You'll be the guy that gladly sits down and
I will use all of my platforms for fire Waldron.
All right, let's turn to the Thursday night football preview. We've got the Ravens at the Chiefs to kick off the NFL season on Peacock, 8:20 Eastern time tomorrow in Kansas City. ESPN Bet has this one at KC favored by 3. KC,
that's right. That 3. Feels right at home.
Yeah, yep. We're defending champs. Close line, obviously, because the Ravens are healthy and super talented. And a 47.5 total. Instant thoughts of this game.
Instant thoughts are the Chiefs lost last year on this exact spot at home to the Lions. I don't think they do it again. I think Andy Reid is historically known as a great September coach. Go back to his Eagles days. The days teams always get up to hot starts. It's always when the weather's good and Andy's cooking stuff up. I also, to my knowledge, Rashee Rice is playing in this game. And so I don't know how long Rashee Rice is going to be a Kansas City Chiefs starter, right? Because we're just waiting for these things to come down. I think this offense is going to come out firing on all cylinders, and it's going to be a really, really good day for Pat Mahomes. I also think the Ravens, while they are an incredible roster, they're a team that's built for December and January. Derrick Henry, that running game, that offensive line, that defense, it's built for December, January. I could see the Ravens struggling a little bit to start the year, but then they're the team you don't want to play when the weather's bad and it's like, crap, we got to play hat-on-hat football, and they just got a bunch of dudes, and I don't want to play those dudes. So I think the Kansas City in the heat early in the year, I think it's going to be high scoring. I think it's one of those things where when you have two of the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL week 1, both want to get off to hot starts. Both are going to throw the ball around. I see it being higher scoring. I think there'll be great defensive plays. I don't think we'll have great defensive showings early in the year. Lamar is hard to game plan for, and we all know Pat Mahomes is hard to game plan for. I see it something along the lines of Chiefs 27, Ravens 23. Maybe the Ravens have a 23-20 lead late in the third, early fourth. Chiefs they're an oddly like turnover prone team over the last couple of years. They have penalties too, with Taylor the tackle, and obviously lining up off sides with what's his name, who's now Tony, who's now no longer a member of the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs have weird things like that. They're not always 100% buttoned up, but Pat is Pat. Also, I fully expect Taylor Swift to be very a part of this game, and I fully expect that to, again, mean there's going to be some magic in the fourth quarter. Remember, Kelsey was injured a year ago, remember? And he missed that game against Detroit. And he had a really rough start to the season. I think that's the opposite this year. Kelsey, as we're going to talk about here in a second, he is staring down the barrel of history as far as Kelsey's a little bit like Mahomes in the sense where it's like, well, numbers-wise, he's not really that close to the best tight end of all time, but eye test, he's like maybe the top 2 or 3 best tight end of all time. Well, after the last year and a half, he's now closing in on some historic numbers. I think that's going to play into it a little bit with Travis and this year. So I think that you're going to absolutely see a big year from Travis. They're going to get off to a hot start. I like the Chiefs 27-23. If I had to adjust the score, I would go maybe like 30-20, but it's closer than we think. 20-20 game in the third. Chiefs score late, and then it seems maybe a little bit more like a blowout, but I like the Chiefs. Chiefs at home. They don't let what happened last year happen again this year. And a lot of that, I think, is because right now they have Rashee Rice and they have Kelsey healthy, and they didn't have that last year.
Fair enough. Yeah, no, I think it's going to be the Kansas City Chiefs coming out hot as well. I also think for one of the first times, before last year, it was always the Ravens had the dominant defense in the matchup. Now the tides are turning. I mean, the Chiefs defense versus the Ravens scares me a lot more than the latter. And so I also think the Chiefs are a little bit more complete of a team. And I still don't know who's catching passes outside of Mark Andrews in this offense. Zay Flowers is really talented. And I believe he's a true number 1. But, the utilization in this offense and also the other playmakers around him, we just haven't seen it for quite some time with the Ravens. And so that's a part of it. I think Derrick Henry is going to be awesome in Baltimore. I think he's exactly what this team has needed for all of these years that they've been searching to have a running back that's actually, not injured and could suit up for games and all of that stuff. So I am excited to see that. And I think it's going to be kind of a kickstart into the league for both teams, because the Chiefs are going to have to face one of the most elusive quarterbacks in the entire league. And so that's a test in and of itself. But they're probably primed right now to deal with that versus in December sometime. It's going to be 90 degrees tomorrow. It's looking like in Kansas City.
We're catching a heat wave here in the Midwest. It was like 87 here in mid-central Illinois today. And so it's going to be warmer.
And it is called for a little bit of rain. We'll see if that manifests. It's supposed to happen towards the evening as well. So keep tabs on that. But yeah, my money would be on the Kansas City Chiefs in this game too. I also agree with you that regardless of what's going to happen with Rashee Rice down the road or whatever, they don't have Hollywood Brown. I think they're going to try and take all of the deep shots that they can, to kind of just start the year strong and try and open up this offense a little bit. So yeah, I will take Chiefs. A little bit higher scoring though, even though that's not typically the case with season openers. I'm going to go 31-27 or 26, excuse me, in favor of the Chiefs. They win by 5. Maybe feels a little bit less close than that with the Ravens getting some points late. But that would be my prediction. We both have the Chiefs winning this one.
Can I just say on the FanDuel Sportsbook app, Mahomes over 1.5 touchdowns minus 188.
Oh yeah, I'll take that all day.
And so if you believe in the Ravens, you believe in Lamar Jackson, his over 1.5 touchdown passes plus 128. So if you think Lamar is going to come out strong, reigning MVP, and remember, I predicted a year ago Lamar to have a big year because he finally got paid. And I said he's going to focus himself in. I think Lamar is going to be one of those storylines again this year where it's like, do we give him the MVP again? Like, I think he's going to have a really solid year. Remember, he came on late in the year to kind of win the MVP because it was like the Dolphins were the 1 seed, the Chiefs were the 1 seed, and the Ravens were kind of hanging around there. And then everyone else kind of fell apart, and the Ravens sprinted to the finish to get that 1 seed, and he played well. I think it's going to be a little different this year. I might parlay both those numbers together. I expect I think Mark Andrews catch a touchdown. I think Travis Kelce catches a touchdown. I think they're throwing the ball over GEHA Field at Arrowhead Stadium, the stupidest name, except for now FedEx Field isn't FedEx Field anymore. It's like something else. The Commanders
should
sold
be
the
called
name.
Arthur Smith Field. His dad, There you go.
Exactly right. So we're both on the Chiefs. We're both on the Chiefs.
Both on the Chiefs. All right, I heard you have some interesting tidbits though for the research you were doing.
If you were listening during the AFC preview, I kind of went off on a rant on Aaron Rodgers, and I did more stat diving. And if you go to my YouTube channel, it's just my name on YouTube. I did a whole thing on Aaron Rodgers and why this is a year. I'll quickly say the Aaron Rodgers thing. Aaron Rodgers needs 5,033 passing yards to pass Big Ben for 5th all time. He's like 9th all time right now. And so for him having a really big year, it would lead to him then starting next year and having a chance to pass Big Ben. He's also only 33 touchdown passes behind Brett Favre for 4th all time. So Aaron's motivation to have a big year statistically also guarantees he probably gets to play again next year as a starter.
Right.
And then that helps him. Aaron at this point needs to be in the top 5 of both of those stats to really help his career. So he can get there if this year goes well. Also, I think he knows too, Matt Stafford is only 3,000 yards behind Aaron Rodgers all time passing yards. So think about that. Stafford, I think Stafford's he's my dark horse MVP. I've already put money on him in the FanDuel Sportsbook to win MVP. And so him and Josh Allen, I think, are both incredible MVP odds. Josh, I think, is second favorite or maybe the favorite, but I believe in him this year. But Stafford's like 3,000 to 1. It's like plus 3,000.
That's crazy. Yeah.
And so I think that's just I think he could throw for 4,500 yards this year. And again, that puts the pressure on Aaron because I think Stafford could play another 2 or 3 years, right? Anyways, moving on. I'll start at the top. Derrick Henry, if Derrick Henry rushes for 1,100 yards, that would move Derrick Henry to 25th all time. Now, I know that seems crazy, like 25th all time. That's not a big deal. That gets him over 10,000 yards. So once you're over 10,000 yards, especially as a modern day running back, that's a huge plateau. We know the game has changed, right? It's not the 70s and the 80s anymore. With 1,100 yards, that puts him just ahead of Jamal Lewis, Ravens great, but ahead of people like Eddie George, Marshawn Lynch, Clinton Portis, Matt Forte, Chris Johnson, guys who we think of as like maybe fringe Hall of Famers. So that really helps Derrick Henry. I think Derrick Henry also with 10 touchdowns. Do I have that stat too? I just want to check here real quick. Yeah. With 10 touchdowns, Derrick Henry would get to 100 all time, which would then bring him over Barry Sanders for 10th, tied in the top 10. So Derrick Henry, 1,100 yards, 10 touchdowns. That's a Hall of Fame resume, right? You're ahead of Barry Sanders for touchdowns. You're into the 10,000 plus yard club. I think we could start to argue, especially with two teams, doing it with the two teams, the impact he had, the close to 2,000 rushing, or did he get it at one time? That's huge. So those are things to look out for. Keenan Allen, DeAndre Hopkins, and Travis Kelce, all of them, Dan, could hit 1,000 receptions this year. Now,
can you name those players one more time?
Keenan Allen with the Bears, DeAndre Hopkins with the Titans, and then Travis Kelce all could hit 1,000 receptions. I don't have that list printed off. Damn, that was dumb of me to not have that one also printed off. Yeah, no, I don't. So I don't know exactly where that puts them all time, but 1,000 receptions. Let me see if I made a note on that. They would become only 14 current players have 1,000 receptions. So they would add on to 17, making the total. Hopkins also
for context. I mean, that's a lot. Jerry Rice had 1,549.
Yeah, so 1,000's it's a big deal. Again, only 14 players in NFL history. Hopkins needs 700 yards for 13,000. That would put him top 20. Dude. All top 20 have 13,000. So again, really Hall of Fame numbers for a Hopkins. Evans could get 13,000. He only needs 1,300 yards to get 13,000. So that would be about average of what Evans has had the past couple of years. Again, he's a little older, and I think he's more of a shoe-in Hall of Famer than even Hopkins right now. Just even with his career, I know numbers-wise that maybe not make sense, but each Evans and Adams, Evans is 6 touchdowns away, and Devontae Adams is 5 touchdowns away from 100 touchdown receptions. Only 10 players have 100-plus touchdown receptions. So Devontae Adams isn't close yet with the big yardage and the receptions, but he's close with the touchdowns. Evans is close with the touchdowns and the yardage. Hopkins is farther away with the touchdowns. And then finally, there's a lot of offensive stats. There's one defensive stat I wanted to make a mention to, mainly because we don't have that many, like TJ Watt's a great player, but he's still kind of far away stats-wise. Cam Jordan, get this, 15 sacks away from tying LT with 132, and that would put him into 14th all time. And so Cam Jordan signed it was like a 3-year extension or 2-year extension. Cam Jordan is basically on a he's on a within 2 years, Cam Jordan get 15 plus sacks? I think he can. If you were to tell me Cam Jordan gets 9 sacks this year, 8 sacks next year, and that puts him above LT, all of a sudden sneaky Cam Jordan has had like a Jason Witten, like Hall of Fame type of career where it's like, at no point in time was he a top 3 at his position or like an Emmitt Smith, right? At no point in time was Emmitt Smith like the number 1 all-time running back in the league. There was always one guy who's more electric, one guy who was a more bigger playmaker, but the yards, speak for themselves. So Cam Jordan is sneakily close. Those are some players that you got to keep an eye out for this year. I wish I had that reception yards total. I will say, Dan,
I do see, because I looked up the receptions leaders, and I do see D Hop is leading the pack of these guys right now. He's at 928 catches. Travis Kelce's at 907, and Keenan Allen's at 904. So Keenan and Kelce are neck and neck. DeAndre's got about 20 catches on them.
Yeah, right Mike Evans is 33rd going into the year with 11,000.
Don't look all the way up the list, because I have a trivia thing I noticed on this list that would be interesting to throw your way.
All right, throw it my way, because I want to look at the list.
Okay. Well, so there's this one player that I had no idea had this many catches. This player had exactly 1,000 catches for his career, and he has more catches than Randy Moss, and just fewer than Isaac Bruce and Steve Smith and Andre Johnson. This player, however, has rarely been in the Hall of Fame conversation.
It's happened,
but This guy's been definitely on the fringe of that
and
conversation.
he's retired.
He's been retired for 10 years, I would say, probably.
Oh, I'm going to then say it's what's his name from the Rams? Is it Torrey Holt? Or no,
It's
Reggie
not,
Wayne.
no.
Reggie Wayne?
Nope.
Because Reggie got in?
Reggie Wayne had 1,070, so he's at number 10 all time. Torrey Holt was at 920, 23rd all time. This player is 14th all time with exactly 1,000 catches.
Give me one more hint. Give me something else. Don't make it too obvious.
I won't. I will say in college, this player played 3 offensive positions, and I don't think that's probably going to be a very helpful hint, but he played 3 offensive positions for a powerhouse.
For a powerhouse.
He played quarterback for his freshman year, and then or maybe he was running back his freshman year, then he was quarterback for 2 years, and then he transitioned to wide receiver his final year in college.
At a powerhouse school?
At a powerhouse, a Power 5 program.
What was
Georgia? He played for Georgia. This was Hines Ward.
Hines Ward.
Yeah, and
he's
honestly, not a lot of people know that about Hines.
He's not in the Hall?
No, nope. And
he should be a Hall of Famer.
He's never made the finalist. Like,
that's weird. I feel like that's weird.
Interesting because honestly, like, obviously, I'm a huge Steelers fan, and I've always been of the like, I can see how he's not, like, I don't know. But I think I've softened to the take that like he should be in the Hall of Fame. I mean, he was just such a scrappy, reliable player. But yeah, it's impressive.
Wide receiver yards is such an interesting stat because it's like I don't see Hines Ward is 28th all time with just over 12,000. So he's ahead of Michael Irvin.
See, that's still crazy. He has more yards and more yards than Michael Irvin, more catches than Randy Moss.
But he's behind. So like contemporaries, right? Brandon Marshall. He's behind Brandon Marshall. Yeah. He's behind Antonio Brown. What do we do with Antonio Brown? DeAndre Hopkins, Julio Jones, 13,700. I think he's not on a roster. He's probably done. He hasn't officially retired, but he's done.
Yeah.
So if Julio Jones ends his career just shy of Anquan Bolden, but he feels like a Hall of Famer. Does Anquan Bolden feel like a Hall of Famer? Or Hall of Very Good. He's 14th all time in yards. And that's why like Mike Evans, it's important for Mike Evans to get to that 13 number. Because I think if you get to 13, then with the career that Evans had to being a part of a Super Bowl win and has so consistent he's been, because like Hopkins, I feel like Hopkins needs to get to that mid 13s, maybe close to 14. Like Hopkins needs a year and a half. If Hopkins gets ahead of Bolden, ahead of Jones, and gets to 14, if you're in the top 12, that's 14. Then it's like everyone. That's all a guarantee.
Yeah. He's got to stay healthy.
It's got to stay healthy for a year and a half.
Yep.
Yeah. So those are fun things to look at. And it's a good way to remind you too of like guys who truly have had impactful careers. I think the Derrick Henry thing is really important. 1,100 yards, 10 touchdowns. I think that's capable. And if he has 1,100 rushing yards and 10 touchdowns, there's no reason why he's not then playing with the Ravens again next year as the starting running back and maybe goes for 900, 700. And then that would get Derrick Henry. Oh, crap. Where did I have my list?
Derrick Henry has the capability to be a 10 touchdown guy for several years. Yeah, the yardage may wane and he might, at the end of his career, the last couple of years, turn into a goal line back and situational player. But he's got to be the best goal line back of all time, if you think about it.
And if Derrick Henry can end his career then if he has 1,100, then he's close to 12,000. And then with those numbers, with that number of yards plus the touchdowns, he's Hall of Fame.
Yeah. I mean, I already think he is, but that would make it a closed door type of argument for sure.
Hey, Dan, really quick, final thing, just as a final button on this show, we have football in less than 24 hours, right? In 24 hours from now. So it's our final time to make like a kind of a bold, prediction or statement. I want to put it though in the net, in like what would truly, if you had to put
me about this year.
So here's the thing. If you had to bet money, like an insane amount of money, amount of money to where your wife would be like, Dan, what the fuck? Like, are you crazy? like that one team is going to, let's say, is going to make the playoffs. Who would you lockstep, injuries, all that you have to take into account? Like you say, I would put insane amount of money that this team is, let's make it a little tougher, wins their division.
Okay, so I have to stake my claim on one team winning their division, bona fide. I'm not going to pick the Chiefs.
Let's say no Chiefs. Let's say no Chiefs. Yeah.
And I also think an injury to Patrick Mahomes makes that extremely, extremely problematic. I mean, obviously, they're a super talented team and they got Andy Reid, but I don't know how confident I'd be.
See, because like,
gosh,
if you have to, like, injuries screw you, because it's like, if it happens, it happens. That worries me with the Niners, right? Because they're very injury prone. Last year was the first time they were not injury prone. I want to hear where you go, because I have a team in mind and I have my reasons why. And so I'm interested to see where you go.
Well, it's got to be a team that I already picked to make the playoffs. So we've got to start there. And so that would limit me. You know what? I think I would go to win their division.
Where it's like,
I think I would go the Detroit Lions.
That's exactly who I would choose. That's exactly who I would choose.
Yeah.
Because my thought is that offensive line, that style of play, the improved defense. Last year, the defense was a question mark, right? Now we could say, no, this is a solid unit, right? They keep Ben Johnson. And then, they lose Van Jefferson, and you're worried a little bit about maybe wide receiver 2, Jameson Williams. Can he become who he is? But remember, this time last year, we didn't think Laporta. We didn't know. No one knew who Sam Laporta was. And now Sam Laporta is the top 3-4 tight end of the league. So I'm with you. I think Detroit, to me, is like the safest lock. Even if there's a major injury, right? Like if Goff goes down, where they probably win the division.
Hendon Hooker is pretty talented.
But like I still feel like they could make the playoffs, like even with a major injury, because the identity of that team. The only thing that scares me with Detroit is now they're the hunted a little bit. And like, how does that respond? Like, how do you respond when it's like, no, when Detroit is on your schedule now, you look at them as like, we got to get up for the Lions.
Yeah. I've already said as well, like, I'll just stay in the NFC North. I have said for a little while now, I believe Caleb Williams is going to have a fantastic year. I truly would put money on him being the offensive rookie of the year. And if I had to say one thing that would absolutely shock me, it would be that Caleb Williams has a below average season and the Bears win 6 or fewer games. I would be shocked at that happening. And that's crazy to say for a team that has already been in that position, in recent memory. But I honestly just, I think Caleb is absolutely legit.
Yeah.
And
do you have any other random bold prediction that you want to stake a claim on before we sign off here in the next minute or so?
I think so. TJ Watt is 1 sack away from surpassing JJ already.
Oh, really?
Career. Yeah.
Wow.
I would say I will pick TJ Watt to break the single season sack record and to break it by like 2.5.
You think he's going like 20 sacks?
I'll say he's going 25. I'll put TJ Watt for a healthy season, 25 sacks. And then he'll lose out on Defensive Player of the Year because they'll say, oh, but Myles Garrett was really good against the run.
That's an awesome prediction. I will say, here's something I actually put my money on. I put a parlay together in the FanDuel Sportsbook. It was like season totals. I have DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and Rome Odunze all
surpassing,
all over 750 yards receiving.
Oh, okay. All right. I could take that.
Parlayed together, so it's pretty good odds.
See that.
And so that means I believe Keenan Allen stays healthy enough.
Yep.
And I believe that Rome finds a real role. And then if you're saying that all three of them are going to hit 750, that's 1,500. That's 2250. So I mean, Caleb Williams, with just those three guys alone, bare minimum at least 2250 passing yards. I think Caleb Williams has 4,000 yards. I don't think he gets 30 touchdown passes. CJ Stroud last year only had 23 touchdown passes.
Yeah,
CJ Stroud was great.
For how much the NFL has evolved over the years, it's still really hard to throw hit 30 touchdowns.
It's really hard to throw 30 touchdowns.
Mahomes did what, 50? Was it 3-4 years ago?
Oh, it was like 20. It was 2019 because it was his second year, his first year as a starter.
And he didn't sniff that. Like, no. and he was
35 is an insane number of touchdown passes.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
So I don't think he's going to 30 touchdown passes. I think it's going to be, though, 4,000 yards, 25, 24 touchdown passes. I'd love to see the interceptions stay around 12 or lower. I got to get that 2-1.
Some efficiency in there, yeah.
And I actually think it's going to be like DJ Moore. I think DJ Moore is going to have over 1,100, 1,200. I didn't go higher with Rome and Caleb and Rome and Keenan because I worry about Keenan's health. And I think Rome, when Keenan is out, because I think Keenan is going to end up missing 3 games or 4 games, right? Does Rome adapt to the number 2 in the way we want him to adapt to number 2? I think he's going to feast as number 3 when they're all healthy. But if he has to play at the number 2, how does that transition work in Shane Waldron's offense? So there you go. That would be my other one. Put some money on it. I put some money on it. Let's have some fun.
I love it. Yeah. As you mentioned, just over 24 hours away from our first NFL action. The next time we talk with you all here, we will have had a full weekend of NFL football to talk about. Incredible stuff. We're launching into our now 2024 NFL season. By the way, our AFC prediction episode, Mark, I didn't even notice this until I ended up, going back and posting it. Episode 200 of the Football Lounge with Mark and Dan. How about that? We have surpassed 200 episodes. Pretty cool stuff.
200 listeners, 200 episodes.
Exactly. We're matching it one for one.
If you're a loyal listener, God, we love you. And we don't do this for anything, but we love doing it. And we hope that you love listening. And we are so pumped for another season of football. I know it's a bummer. We're not going to do the Monday early afternoon thing anymore. That's on me with all the changes in life. But Tuesday nights, tune on in for the live. We'll be live. And then obviously on all the Apple Podcasts and all the other networks, you can find us, and we're ready for it.
Yeah, we certainly are. And now we'll be able to get the full week's worth of games in there.
And the live thing is cool because you can join us and talk with us live and get on. Exactly. We want that. So join us live on Tuesday nights.
Yep, absolutely. We will be here Tuesday nights moving forward, and would love to get that interaction. So appreciate all the support. Hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, all of that good stuff at FB Lounge Pod. And as always, appreciate the viewership and listenership. And we'll see you back here ready to talk some football in just a few days.